Most empires don't fall in a single moment. They drift, they slip. One generation is at the center of the world. A few generations later, someone else is. One man tried to find a pattern. Sir John Glubb, born in Preston, England in 1897, wounded in the First World War. A German shell shattered his jaw at age 20. He spent 36 years in the Middle East. The Bedouin called him Abu Hunayk, father of the little jaw. He commanded the Arab Legion. He retired to a quiet village in East Sussex. In 1976, near the end of his life, Glubb wrote a short essay, 26 pages, published by Blackwood and Sons in Edinburgh. He called it The Fate of Empires and the Search for Survival. It tried to answer a question almost no one was asking. How long does an empire actually last? Glubb looked at every great power in recorded history. The Assyrians, the Persians, Alexander's empire, the Roman Republic, the Byzantines, the Arabs, the Spanish, the Ottomans, the British. He measured each one beginning to end. And he found something strange. The pattern emerges. Most of these empires lasted roughly the same amount of time. 250 years, give or take a generation. Different cultures, different centuries, different fates. But the lifespan kept coming back to the same number. This year, the United States turns 250 years old. Glubb's claim sounds impossible at first. How could empires that existed thousands of years apart, different climates, different technologies, different cultures, all last about the same length of time? But look at the data. Spain. Their dominant period runs from roughly 1500, the decade after Columbus reaches the Americas, to about 1750, when their treasure fleets stopped covering their debts, from silver mines in Peru to bankruptcy in Madrid. 250 years, the Netherlands. Their golden age begins in 1602, with the founding of the Dutch East India Company, the world's first multinational corporation, the first company in history to sell shares to the public. It ends at the Congress of Vienna in 1815. 213 years. Romanov Russia. Peter the Great takes the throne in 1682 and drags Russia into the modern world. The dynasty ends in 1917, when the last Tsar and his family are taken to a basement in Yekaterinburg. 235 years. Britain. Their imperial dominance begins around 1700, when they overtake the Dutch as Europe's leading naval power. It ends quietly around 1950, when the empire can no longer afford itself. 250 years, 4 different countries, 4 different centuries, 4 completely different reasons for their rise. Silver, trade, autocracy, industry. And all 4 lasted roughly the same amount of time. Glubb's number wasn't a guess, it was a measurement. And he wasn't the first person to notice the pattern. The 14th century historian Ibn Khaldun, writing in 1377, had described something very similar, the rise and fall of dynasties every few generations. But Glubb was the first person to put a number on it. We'll call it the 250-year lifespan. Glubb saw the pattern, he named it, but he was honest about something. He didn't fully know why. Why 250 years? Why not 300? Why not 80? The simplest answer is the one Glubb settled on. It comes down to generations. A human generation is about 40 years, and almost every empire lasts about 6 of them. The first generation are pioneers. They're hungry. They came from somewhere harder. They build the empire because they have nothing to lose and everything to prove. The second generation are conquerors. They take what the pioneers built and expand it. The borders grow. The army wins. The flag goes everywhere. The third generation are merchants. The fighting slows. The wealth pours in. Trade routes replace military campaigns. The empire stops conquering and starts counting. The fourth generation inherits the wealth. They've never known struggle. The empire is at its peak, its richest, its most powerful, its most admired. From the outside, it looks unstoppable. The fifth generation turns inward. Universities multiply. Philosophy flourishes. The empire's best minds debate ideas while the empire's edges start to fray. Nobody notices yet. The sixth generation loses the plot. The old virtues, discipline, sacrifice, civic duty, start to feel quaint. Entertainment gets louder, politics gets uglier, the centre cannot hold. The seventh generation lives in a country that no longer remembers who built it. The walls are still standing, the currency still spends, but something underneath has gone quiet. And then one day, it's over. Each generation inherits an empire built by people they will never meet, solving problems they will never face. The hunger that built it cannot be passed down. Neither can the discipline, or the memory of what it took. This is what Glubbs saw. Not a curse, not a coincidence, a clock. The same clock that runs in any family business, any institution, any nation. 6 generations to build, then 6 more, and you start again. So back to where we started. This year, 2026, the United States turns 250 years old. 250 years since 1776. 6 generations. Exactly the number Glubb predicted any empire could expect. So let's run the checklist. Stage 1, pioneers, the settlers, the colonists, the people who crossed an ocean and built something out of forest. Stage 2, conquests. Manifest destiny, the continent crossed in 100 years, the frontier closed by 1890. Stage 3, commerce, the industrial age, Rockefeller, Carnegie. America becomes the world's largest economy by 1900. Stage 4, affluence. After the Second World War, the United States becomes the wealthiest nation in human history. Roughly 26% of global GDP, from less than 5% of the world's population. Stage 5, intellect. America has more top-ranked universities than the rest of the world combined. Cultural debates increasingly happen on campus before they happen anywhere else. Stage 6, decadence. Entertainment dominates politics. Politics increasingly resembles entertainment. Civic discipline, voting, military service, civic memory at generational lows. Stage 7, the early signs. Federal debt has crossed $39 trillion, larger than the entire annual economic output of the country, growing faster than the economy itself. Domestic political polarization at levels not seen since the 1860s. The decade of the Civil War. Trust in institutions at the lowest point since reliable polling began. None of this means America is about to collapse next Tuesday. Empires don't fall on schedules. But on Glubb's clock, 250 years in, this is exactly where we'd expect a great power to be. But maybe America is different. Maybe the United States isn't another empire on the clock. Maybe the rules don't apply to us. Every empire that ever existed believed exactly that. The Romans were sure of it. The Spanish were sure of it. The British were sure of it. None of them were right. Every empire thinks it's the exception. None of them are. Glubb's pattern doesn't tell us what happens next. It only tells us where we are. What we do with that knowledge. That part has never been written. What has been will be. There is nothing new under the sun.